Hello everybody, we are back ready to do our last video in this particular little series that we're doing. We have one investigator that we haven't looked at, and she is Little Miss Wizard down here, Agnes Baker. She is a mystic, or she pulls cards primarily from the mystic group, and she can also pull cards from the survivor group. Let's take a look at Agnes's card. So, as a spellcaster, she is quite strong of will, so she has a willpower of 5. I think in the game it's the only other statistic that is maxed out at 5 apart from Wendy's agility. Willpower is a peculiar little statistic in Arkham Horror the card game, at least with the current core set card pool. The statistic isn't used very much, but it is used a lot on some very nasty encounter cards. Some revelations can do some nasty damage to you, can make you have to get rid of assets with the Crypt Chill card. So willpower is, how can we say this diplomatically? It's not as important in a statistic as something like intellect, where intellect allows you to gain clues, and gaining clues is pretty much how you advance the acts, and you win the game by advancing acts. It's a little bit more, what's the word? Situational. But it's very nice to have when you need it. The good thing about Agnes is that being an investigator that uses cards from the Mystic pool, so many of these cards actually feed off a strong willpower score, which we'll see when we dive into these. So the willpower of 5 is the backbone of Agnes's capability in the game. She's actually not very good at investigating for clues, slightly below average with a intellect of 2. Similarly, for combat, she's also at 2 there, so she's not at Wendy levels of uselessness, but she is going to struggle against monsters just going fist to snout. She will struggle to get up to those nice buffer zones with the chaos bag, where you want to be at -1 or -2 or better. She's more likely to be hovering around the I need 0s or better, or if I'm lucky, -1 or better. Agility of 3 is perfectly usable, gives her a functional option of evasion, which is good because on her own she's not much of a fighter, as we've just discussed. She has 6 health and 8 sanity. The 8 sanity is of particular note there, as, well, we'll go into that. A lot of her cards play around with Agnes's sanity. In fact, we'll get straight into that when we look at her special text. As a reaction trigger, after 1 or more horror is placed on Agnes, she can then deal 1 damage to any enemy at her location. But she can only do this once per phase. Note that isn't once per round, it is once per phase. So she can do it during the investigation phase, where she is using her actions. The enemy phase then comes after. If an enemy attacks her and deals horror damage to her, that's another damage that she can apply. Her Elder Sign effect is 0, but classed as +1 for every horror that she's taken. So an Elder Sign is 0 at the start of the game, assuming she doesn't have any mental trauma, and once she takes horror, which Agnes is going to take some horror, she actually gets a very, very strong Elder Sign effect. Let's take a look at her special cards, and then we'll jump into the 2 class cards. We've been over the survivor cards with Wendy, but we'll take another look at them. Her good unique card is the Heirloom of Hyperborea. 3 cost, has a nice selection of skill modifying icons in the top. After you play a spell card, draw 1 card. So it reacts to you playing a spell card from your hand into your play area. and whenever you do that, you get to replace it with another card. Card replacing is super useful in pretty much any card game which includes it. So just a solid item there. Ideally, you won't really be playing this if you don't draw into it early and you play a bunch of your important spells out to your play area, and then you draw into Heirloom of Hyperborea. It's of questionable worth paying the 3 resources, because you are unlikely there to be playing more spells, duplicate spells, into your play area. So perhaps then you can look at that juicy wild icon that can be thrown at a test, or you know. But still, nice item and suitably thematic for Agnes as a spell user. Her weakness is perhaps the most interesting one of these 5 investigators, I think. It is actually classed as a spell. The way this works is you will draw it, and instead of it going, as a lot of them do, immediately into your threat area, you will actually just hold it in your hand as a regular card. You can play the spell as any other regular spell. It costs 2, as you can see, and when you play this spell, it puts 1 doom on the current agenda, and that can cause the agenda to advance. It has some forced text. So if you choose not to pay the 2 resources and the extra 1 doom, if you choose not to play it into your play area, it's going to be in your hand. Every turn that it is in your hand, at the end of that turn, you're going to have to reveal it to any other players in the game, take 2 horror, and then you put it back in your hand. It's an interesting card, largely because you can play it, play 2 resources, play it, take the extra doom. That's no good, obviously, you don't want that. But it's not so bad, it's not the end of the world. Having a recurring 2 horror damage smack you around the head every single turn is also kind of terrible. However, there may be some specific situations where you can turn that to your advantage, because whenever Agnes takes horror damage, she gets to deal 1 damage to an enemy. And this effect happens, it happens at the end of the turn. So once she has played all of her actions, it happens before the enemy phase. You take that 2 horror, is the specific timing. Once you've taken your 3 actions, but before the enemy phase begins, is what is classed as the end of your turn here. So yeah, the thing to note about this is it is a spell, so any of these that interact with spells, after you play a spell card, if Heirloom of Hyperborea is out and you draw your weakness, your unique weakness, it is classed as a spell. Heirloom would give you a card. Right then, let's build a deck for Agnes. Now, I've played a few games with Agnes. I struggle with Agnes. She's the least consistent, I have said. I've played a couple of games using just core set rules, where you take all of these, and then a few of the neutral cards. And I've played some games with her using Tabletop Simulator in order to duplicate my cards and do the 2 core set kind of deck building. She's fun to play, really fun to play, a little bit inconsistent, but I think the inconsistency, I feel like the inconsistency comes down to my play. There's been at least 1 game where I just drew really poorly and I got bad luck. But the point I'm making here is I feel like I am getting better at playing with Agnes. I'm not saying that you're going to see good play here, heaven forbid. The point is that I really enjoy playing with Agnes because I feel like I learn something each game, and I can look back and go, oh, of course I could do this, or I shouldn't have done that this turn, or you come up with some new little interaction between cards. The ability for her to take these little pings of horror but apply them around her to enemies, I don't know, it's a fun little mechanic. Yeah, I really enjoy. What I have noted in the games that I've played, I tend to favour taking cards from the Mystic pool much more than the Survivor pool, because just all of these are kind of useful for Agnes. Let's go through them. I'm just going to throw 2 tokens on this card because it's amazing. 0 cost asset. You play it to your play area and put 4 resource tokens on it. Once the resource tokens are gone, it gets discarded. As a free action, so you don't have to spend one of your own personal actions, you can exhaust the card, so flip it 90 degrees, take 1 horror. Taking 1 horror allows you to ping an enemy for 1 damage, and take the resource that you use to track these secrets. You then just take that resource token and put it in your resource pool. It becomes actual cash that you can spend. Really, really nice, and the ability to do that whenever you want as a free action is lovely. It's amazing. We're going to take 2 of those, 100%. Arcane Initiate is a very interesting card. It's an ally with 1 health and 2 sanity. It has a forced effect when you play it at 1 cost. You play the ally into your area, and then you have to place 1 doom on it. Now note, it does not have text. Unlike here, this if you place 1 doom on the current agenda, this effect can cause the current agenda to advance, and the encounter card, which also places 1 doom on the agenda and it has the text, this can cause the agenda to advance. Arcane Initiate, place 1 doom on it, this cannot cause the agenda to advance. The agenda will advance under its own rules, which is to say, in the Mythos phase at the start of the turn, you increment doom, and then at that point after check whether the agenda advances. There's a couple of interesting ways you can do that then. So let's say agenda 1 with a value of 3. You're in a turn and the agenda is on 2. You know that the next Mythos phase it is going to bump up to 3 and it's going to advance. If you play Arcane Initiate when that agenda counter is on 2, it would go up to 3, but it doesn't advance. The Mythos phase rolls around, you add another 1, so it goes up to 4 actually, and then you check whether it is at the threshold. Whenever the agenda advances, all doom in play is removed. So the doom token that is on Arcane Initiate at that point does get taken away, it's deleted. It loses that doom token and it no longer has that negative impact on the board state. The other neat thing you can do with Arcane Initiate, let's take the second agenda with a value of 7. You could throw Arcane Initiate out early on, say take it from a value of 1 to a value of 2, and then you get 3 doom, 4 doom, 5 doom. You get a few turns there to play around with Arcane Initiate. Before you get to the point where it will help trigger the value of 7, you just drop 1 damage on the Arcane Initiate and she dies and the doom token goes with her. So she's no longer in play. Essentially the doom only counts when it hits the threshold. If you add 2 doom between the thresholds, that doesn't do anything as long as if it doesn't cause the threshold to be met. And it's a great card for finding certain spells that you need, and there are certain spells here that Agnes needs, which we'll come to, but hint hint, shriveling. So we're going to put 2 on Arcane Initiate. Scrying we saw in the Daisy playthrough. It allows you to either manipulate the encounter deck or manipulate the top of your own deck or another investigator's deck. I used it in the Daisy game, I've used it a lot in my own personal games. I just think Scrying is a really fun card, and being able to mess around with the encounter deck, switch the order of those cards around and then play to them specifically. Here's the encounter card that is not going to let me play any assets or events, so I'm going to make myself be in a position where I don't need to play assets events that turn, that kind of thing. We're going to take 2 Scrying. I feel a little bit certain that we are going to end up with more than 30 tokens here, and we're going to have to get rid of a few. Holy Rosary is excellent for Agnes as a spellcaster. It gives her a buff to her willpower, just helping all those tests that she'll have to make. And it also has 2 valuable sanity 2 sanity points that she can use as a buffer if she is in a position where she's taking horror and there's no enemies around, so she doesn't get to take advantage of the pinging 1 damage. So let's take 2 of those also. Arcane Studies. Being able to buff your willpower is great for her, and being able to buff her intellect is nice also because she does struggle getting clues, certain specific cards notwithstanding. I'm only going to take... No, I'm going to put 2 on here, but I think this will be one of the ones that we will, at the very least, dip down to just 1 copy of. And then Shriveling is auto pick. Shriveling is Agnes's primary way of dealing damage alongside her special 1 damage at a time horror ping. It is a 3-cost asset, it is a spell, and it gets 4 charges. As an action, you can do a fight, and this does not use your combat, it will use your enormous willpower stat. So you immediately are at a huge advantage, even compared to some of the other the strongest fighters in the game are going to be like looking up at Agnes with respect, because that 5 willpower plus whatever other bonuses she has, really nice. This attack uses your willpower instead of combat and deals +1 damage. There is a little bit of extra flavour there where if you get one of the icon tokens, as long as it's not the Elder Sign, any of the other icon tokens, if they are revealed from the Chaos Bag, you will take 1 horror. That's not good, you don't want to take horror, but maybe you do want to take horror because it allows you to ping damage on an enemy. We have Drawn to the Flame here into our events. Draw the top card of the encounter deck. How could that be a good idea? You want to stay away from the encounter deck as much as possible. It is filled with horrors and nastiness and all of the things in the game that make your life miserable. However, it doesn't cost anything to play, and you immediately discover 2 clues at your location. So, think of it in terms of you don't have a flashlight, you're in the cellar, and it's a very difficult intellect check. She has an intellect of 2 versus a shroud value of 4. That's going to be really difficult if you're not able to buff it with skill modifiers. It may take you more than 1 turn throwing skill checks at those clues in the cellar to actually succeed in getting even 1. And the price you pay there is an encounter card in the Mythos phase and a tick of doom. You can just take an encounter card and grab those 2 clues automatically, which that could make or break. If you're going for a fast run to the Ghoul Priest, for example, in the first scenario, just diving into the cellar, grab this, get your 2 clues, just see what happens in the encounter deck. You have a huge willpower, so there are several of those encounter cards that you're not going to shrug them off, but you are in a very nice position to deal with them. Maybe you can combine it with scrying to make sure that the encounter card that you're going to draw isn't going to do a problem. You could draw the fog, for example, give the cellar a shroud value of 6. It doesn't matter, you just grab the clues from there. Whether we take 1 or 2 of these, I think with this I'm thinking we either take 1 flashlight and 1 of these. I think that might be better. I'm just going to take 1 of these and 1 flashlight, and then that's 2 cards that we can use for dealing with the cellar and hoping. Or maybe no. We're going to take 2 of these and 1 flashlight, and that gives us 3 cards. The reason if we deal with the cellar in some other way, or we draw into a duplicate of this, we still always have 1 little willpower icon there that we can throw at, hopefully, a shriveling test or the like. Ward of Protection is a way to protect us against negative encounter cards of a non-weakness treachery variety. It simply just cancels the revelation effect, and then we take a horror. So we get rid of 1 crappy effect, we take 1 horror, hopefully do 1 damage to an enemy, and push comes to shove, we can always just commit it for a wild icon. A nice little reactive card there that you can play when something happens that you really don't want to happen. And then we have a 2-cost event which allows us to evade. It's just a single enemy, it's an evade. This evasion attempt uses your willpower instead of agility, so similar to shriveling, it allows you to use willpower instead of your agility. Similar extra text, but rather than take a horror, it forces you to lose one action. There aren't... I might be wrong about this, but thinking about how the game plays, I don't think you'll technically be wanting to evade on your last action, even though it wouldn't cost you an action. If you chose to do it on your third action, the extra text there wouldn't affect you, but evading as a last action isn't perhaps the best play. Maybe there are situations where it's fine. I'm not sure about that yet. We will take one of these. Fearless. If this skill test is successful, heal 1 horror. Because there are so many little sources of horror loss for Agnes, I like having 2 of these just to heal back and give myself that extra buffer. What are we on at the moment? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 and 19. So we have 11 cards left. I think with the survivor cards, I think as a backup I want at least 1 baseball bat. I want at least 1 leather coat. The leather coat is just a little 2 health buffer. You can throw out, no asset, cost you an action, and it's just another way to soak up a little bit of damage with her being 6 and 8. I like having one of these kind of floating around as an option. It's always nice to get out. I'll happily spend 1 action to heal for 2, which is essentially what this is. Is Dig Deep going to be useful for us? It affects our willpower, it affects our agility. It could be, actually. I actually think Dig Deep might be very good for Agnes, but I'm going to gloss over it because I've gone so heavy up here. Arguably too heavy. I want to take both Lucky and Look What I Found. Maybe I'll just take 1 Look What I Found. So this is a clue acquisition, just a way to gather clues. And we will take 2 Luckies because I like having these in hand for when just things go bad. It's just a nice little... Nope, that's not going to happen. Actually, I am going to pass that because if I fail this one right now, then it's game over. Just having these in there to throw at really just poor bag draws is nice. We were at 19 up here, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. We have 6 more cards to pick, so we'll go up to our neutral cards. Do I even want to take a flashlight now? We'll take 2 resource dumps. We have 4 left. I will take the 2 unexpected courages. Now, which of these 4 statistics is best for us? Is it agility? Is it combat? I think... Is it perception? Just to get those clues. I think for Agnes, the best thing she can do really, rather than fighting the Ghoul Priest, is to evade the Ghoul Priest. And then you don't necessarily have to deal with the Ghoul Priest's retaliation effect so much. And it gives her that much more of an opportunity to ping away at it. So with a view to how we're going to handle the Ghoul Priest, I'm going to take 2 agility checks. Let's do a final count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those are our 30 cards. Whether that's a good deck or not, I don't know, you tell me. Leave me a comment telling me how awful that is. Before we finish the video, I will give the basic weakness deck a shuffle, and we'll see what we get to have some fun with. Haunted, that is appropriate for Agnes. It's a treachery, basic weakness, and curse. As a revelation effect, add Haunted to your threat area. You get -1 to each of your skills. Spend 2 actions to discard this card. Okay, so it's something that slows you down. Nasty effect, -1 to all of the skills. That's crippling, considering she has so many 2s. She doesn't have any 1s. You couldn't reduce a skill of 1 down further, that's as far as it can go, but she does have a lot of 2s, which brings those right down to 1. But it only takes 2 actions to get rid of, so yeah, that's not too bad actually. Not too concerned about that, but it's something that we can still play around. Where did I... Oh yeah, of course. So I'm going to throw that in my deck. I'm going to stop the video now and build this, and I hope you will join me where we'll take Agnes out and she can show me some of her tricks. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye bye.